Victoria was overwhelmed with suspicions about the secrets her boyfriend seemed to be hiding. The lack of knowledge about his family and his home only intensified her worries. However, when, by a twist of fate, she witnesses her boyfriend entering a house with another woman, she finds herself on the brink of discovering the truth. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. In the bustling Saturday night, Victoria immersed herself in the vibrant atmosphere of her best friend's bachelorette party. The plans were simple: a dinner at a sophisticated restaurant, followed by a few drinks at a trendy bar in the city. It was the kind of schedule that promised fun and laughter among friends. In recent months, Victoria had become a rare presence at gatherings with her friends. Since she started dating the jealous Fred, she had been avoiding going out with them, aware of how much it annoyed him. Avoiding conflicts was her strategy to preserve peace in the relationship, even if it meant distancing herself a bit from her friends. But tonight was different. It was a special moment for her best friend, and Victoria was determined to be there. Fred, busy with his professional commitments, had no idea about Victoria's plans for the night. She chose to keep it a secret, sparing them from a possible argument that could further strain their relationship. Upon arriving at the restaurant, they were led to the reserved table, where the sparkle in her friend's eyes reflected the promise of a memorable night. Victoria plunged into the effervescent atmosphere of the occasion, aware that moments like that had been rare since she started her relationship with Fred. Amid laughter and jokes, destiny held unexpected surprises, ready to trigger a series of unforeseen twists. At one point, Victoria's eyes drifted towards the door, where a familiar figure caught her attention. It was her boyfriend, Fred. A wave of perplexity washed over her. What would he be doing there? Could it be some business dinner? These thoughts rushed through her mind as she stood up to approach him. However, as soon as her boyfriend noticed Victoria's presence, he seemed to freeze. And when she got closer, a shocking discovery awaited her. He was not alone. He was accompanied by a woman and 2 children. And then, the words of one of the children echoed in her ears, calling her boyfriend Daddy. A reality check hit her hard. Fred was married, had a family. Suddenly, everything made sense. The mysterious disappearances, the last-minute work commitments. Victoria halted her approach, realizing the complexity of the situation in which she had inadvertently become involved. With eyes brimming with tears, the young woman had no intention of triggering a scandal or exposing that woman and the children to an embarrassing situation. Discreetly, she returned to the table. "Let's get out of here, please," she repeated to her friends, explaining what she had just discovered. Before leaving, Victoria saw Fred and his family passing by her table. The man's apprehensive look did not go unnoticed, aware that his fate was in her hands. However, the young woman had no intention of turning that space into a confrontation stage. She understood that the family was also a victim of that man. In the following days, dozens of messages from Fred flooded Victoria's cell phone, accompanied by incessant calls. She chose to completely ignore them, refusing to read the messages or answer the calls. Victoria had placed her dreams in Fred, believing he was the man with whom she would build a future. Discovering his true nature as someone wicked and unfaithful was a devastating blow to her. Additionally, the weight of guilt overwhelmed her for having been involved with a married man, even unknowingly. "You need to go out, meet new people. That man doesn't deserve you to be depressed for so long," insisted her friends, trying to lift her spirits. The last thing the young woman wanted at that moment was to dive into a new relationship. Fate, with its peculiar sense of humour, sometimes acts in unexpected ways. One day, as Victoria was returning home after work, she walked distractedly, mesmerised by the phone screen, unaware of the manhole in her path. Her shoe heel got stuck between the small bars of the manhole, forcing her to bend down and try to free it with her hands. It was at that exact moment that another pedestrian, also distracted by their phone, didn't notice Victoria and tripped over her, resulting in both of them rolling on the sidewalk in a tangle of arms and legs. "Can't you see? Didn't you see me here, you clumsy oaf?" protested the young woman as she stood up, rubbing her sore arms. "How could I have imagined that someone would be standing in the middle of the sidewalk?" the young man retorted, equally annoyed, as he recovered from the fall. Then the two looked at each other and realised how comical the situation was. They couldn't resist, and a laugh escaped both of them, dissipating the tension in the air. "By the way, my name is Paul. Would you accept a coffee with me so I can apologise for this mess?" said the young man, revealing his name. Victoria was about to decline the invitation, as she had been doing with all male advances since the disappointment with Fred. However, something in Paul seemed to awaken a different feeling in her. "So you're admitting that it was your fault for this whole mess?" she replied with a playful smile. The two spent hours talking in that cafe. It was as if their meeting was destined to happen. Despite working in the same office building, they had never crossed paths before. It took a clumsy encounter to bring these two souls together in an unexpected way, but maybe in the end it was exactly what they both needed. As the relationship with Paul progressed, casual meetings became more frequent until it became official. They were a couple. Victoria introduced him to her parents and friends, and Paul seemed genuinely happy to be part of his girlfriend's life. However, a hint of concern began to settle in her heart. She had never met Paul's family, and he had never invited her to visit his house. All meetings took place in neutral locations or at Victoria's house. Given her history with Fred, she couldn't shake the thought that Paul might be hiding something from her. This doubt began to undermine the trust she had built in the relationship, leaving her in an emotional dilemma about how to address this issue with Paul without seeming intrusive or suspicious. And the truth is that when we have a suspicion, it's as if our brain automatically searches for arguments to justify our thoughts. And so it happened with Victoria. Any delay from Paul, or even if he needed to cancel an appointment they had planned, was enough reason for her thoughts to wander to her previous relationship. Every little hesitation from Paul, no matter how justifiable, seemed to fuel Victoria's worries, making her relive past disappointments. She found herself constantly analysing every word, every gesture, looking for clues that would confirm or refute her suspicions. It was in one of those precious moments that Victoria had an overwhelming certainty. Her boyfriend was hiding something really significant. They were together in a restaurant with friends when Paul's phone rang. She caught a glimpse of a woman's photo on the screen before he stood up to take the call outside the restaurant. Victoria watched him with a mix of apprehension and curiosity as he spoke on the phone, noting his evident nervousness. Finally, Paul returned to the table. "Guys, I'm sorry, but I have to go. A family emergency came up," he announced, grabbing his coat to leave. "Do you want me to go with you, Paul?" Victoria asked, also standing up, ready to offer her support. "No need, my love. Enjoy the evening with our friends. I'll call you tomorrow," he replied, giving her a kiss before quickly walking away. The gesture left Victoria with a lump in her throat, certain that something was deeply wrong. The next day, Paul didn't call, nor the next one. It was only 2 days later that Victoria received a message from him. "Hi, my love. Sorry for not calling earlier. I had to deal with a really urgent matter. I'll call you as soon as I can," read the brief message. For Victoria, there was no doubt left. Paul probably had another family, and she was not willing to be made a fool of once again. She decided to ignore his messages and calls. But, as often happens in life, coincidences would once again change Victoria's fate. One day, she was going to a newlywed friend's house for an afternoon coffee when she spotted someone familiar from a distance. It was Paul, entering a house accompanied by a young woman. The scene brought back the episode at the restaurant, but this time there were no children involved. Moved by anger, Victoria decided to confront him. She went to the house and rang the doorbell. Paul came out, visibly confused to see her there. "So this is where you live with your family, isn't it, you traitor? Does your wife know you had a girlfriend?" Victoria shouted, unloading all her anger and frustration. At that moment, the young woman who was with Paul came out of the house. "Jessica, "This is my girlfriend, Victoria," he said, addressing the woman who had just appeared. "Ah, the famous Victoria. Paul has been talking a lot about you in the past few days," said Jessica, surprising Victoria. Victoria was confused as she had assumed Jessica was Paul's wife. "Victoria, this is Jessica, my younger sister," Paul clarified, dispelling the misunderstanding and revealing the true relationship between them. Paul invited Victoria into his house. Upon entering, Victoria encountered the sight of a frail figure sitting in a wheelchair in the living room. "Victoria, this is my mother," Paul introduced, while the woman extended her hand with difficulty to greet Victoria. It was evident that it was time for an honest conversation between Paul and Victoria. Together, they went to the garden of the house where they could be alone. "Victoria, the truth is that a few months ago, just before we started dating, my mother's health began to decline due to an illness. Since she was a widow, I had to move back in with her to help with her care. My sister and I take turns with the help of a caregiver. That day at the restaurant, I had to leave because the caregiver couldn't be present, and my mother would have been left alone. I know I should have told you, but as I got to know your family and friends, I realised you had a stable and uncomplicated life. I didn't want my problems and responsibilities to become yours," Paul explained. Victoria was surprised by Paul's revelation. "Paul, when I entered this relationship, I introduced you to my friends and family as an invitation to my life. A commitment not just for the good times. I want to share life's difficulties with you. Let me be part of your life," Victoria said sincerely. Paul hugged his girlfriend, feeling grateful to have someone like her by his side. It was the beginning of a new phase for that young couple. "Paul, just one more question. There are no hidden wives or children in this house, right?" joked Victoria, with a mischievous smile, dissipating any remaining tension. The story of Victoria and Paul reminds us of the difficulty of trusting again after a disappointment. It is understandable that past experiences leave emotional scars that can cloud our judgment and make us reluctant to open our hearts again. It is important to remember that each person and relationship is unique. Sometimes it takes courage to recognise that not everyone is the same and to be willing to give the new a chance, even if it means facing old fears. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.